So the next speaker is Sovesh Mohapatra from University of Pennsylvania, United States.
Hello. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sovesh Mohapatra from University of Pennsylvania. Today I will be presenting TReND, transformer-derived features for neonatal functional, with regularized NMF for neonatal functional parcellation. This work addresses a fundamental challenge in developmental neuroscience and presents voxel-wise course-level based 7 and 19 networks specifically designed for functional network parcellation of neonatal brain. I have nothing to disclose. Brain parcellation has significantly evolved over the past century. Starting with the classical Brodmann's cytoarchitectural studies in 1909, we have progressed through MRI-based modalities, including the AAL atlas using anatomical morphology, diffusion MRI-based tractography endpoints for corpus callosum and thalamus parcellation, and DTI-based color maps and white matter fiber pathways. In 2011, functional connectivity analysis of resting state fMRI revealed 7 and 17 functional networks in adults. Pushing this further, with the help of multimodal information, 180 areas in each hemisphere was delineated in the adult brain. Our lab has also contributed age-specific brain atlas across developmental stages, fetal, neonatal, and infant, using DTI-based color map and white fiber pathways. We have also developed neonatal parcellation using functional connectivity, complementing existing infant parcellation from other groups. However, a critical gap still remains. While we have robustly developed structural atlases across developmental, but reliable functional atlas remains a gap for the rapidly developing neonatal brains. So, resting state fMRI has enabled functional parcellation through various approaches. These include functional connectivity matrix, random parcellation, pre-processed resting state fMRI time series data. Along that, parcellation has even done at individual level, multimodal approaches that integrate structural and functional information, and functional parcellation across lifespan. As we know, there are unique challenges involved while parcellating neonatal brains. Rapid functional segregation occurs during the third trimester. Imaging quality is often poor due to movement, and critically, we lack established functional atlas as reference standards. There had been works which tried addressing the fundamental challenge of establishing a functional atlas for neonatal population, like our previous work using RNCut, and recently in 2024, Myers and colleagues using watershed segmentation. So, there is an interesting logic here. We believe that the transformer-based autoencoders, which can capture long-range temporal dependencies while mitigating noise, can help us extract the temporal features for carrying functional parcellation. I will come back to this point, why we have been ignoring the temporal features from raw bold signals. So, here are the 4 major action items when carrying a robust parcellation. TReND integrates several key innovations to address each, starting with the transformer-based autoencoder for capturing temporal features, which is combined with a confidence-adapting mask for mitigating the noise inference, regularized NMF for clustering with sparsity and smoothness, finally, validation on simulated DHCP and HCPYA for generalizability of the method and producing parcels of better spatial continuity and functional homogeneity. So, now, here is a complete overview how the method works. We start with pre-processed bold signal, and as I said, if you remember, we do extract temporal features using our transformer-based autoencoder. These temporally derived features then form a correlation matrix, similar to what we call as functional connectivity matrix. Then using geodesic distances, we threshold this correlation matrix before the regularized NMF decomposition. The RNMF loss includes sparsity and smoothness terms that promote biological plausible parcellations. Finally, K-means on the factorized features produces discrete network levels. Now, we extract the temporal features, but this is new. And we have done by reconstructing the original time series, which allows the features to be reliable and, most importantly, free from any mathematical constraints which the traditional methods include. This confidential module is central to our approach for the attention layer. By learning to identify and downwind unreliable time points during the training, the model naturally distinguishes the reliable and distinct temporal features. The self-supervised approach ensures that the learning embeddings or temporal features as we interpret are too representative of the original bold signal. Our clustering approach uses non-negative double SVD initialization rather than random initialization, which generally NMF uses, providing more stable solutions. The regularized NMF then decomposes a feature under sparsity and smoothness concepts, followed by k-means for final discrete. Now, as we are aware, I'm talking about functional parcellation, but I also know that there is no ground truth that I can say that, okay, this is the ground truth, I'm going to use a die-score and just say, yeah, this is great. So we implemented the SimTB tool by Vince Collin, and we tried to use our method and see how validated we can do that. So this is the ground truth, and you can see the trend is very similar to the ground truth. Now, interesting, feature extraction. So the feature extraction using PCA, UMAP, tensor decomposition, you can see that the trend has percent of mislevel that's less than a 6%, whereas PCA is 18, UMAP is 44, and 20 is TD. Similarly, the clustering features also show that the same thing, where the NMF was 24%, but when you use our NMF, the version we created has 5.8%. But and similarly, ICA and KPCA has 49 and 43. Now, that's all about the simulated data. We don't care about that. That's just for validation. We have to understand that, okay, but if I'm a doctor, if I'm a neurologist, I'm like, okay, show me the parcellations of your neonatal atlas. That is where I'm more interested. So, as we know that clustering is a stability test we have to do, because if you are using k-means, if you are using other clustering methods, you are the boss. You can decide the number of clusters, 100, 500, or 10, whatever you want. So we have to do a cluster stability test across 3 to 19 and say that, okay, these are the stable clusters that we can reproduce over time. So we found the 7 and 19 networks of optimal confidence. And also here is our beautiful confidence map that shows that except the boundary map, we're very confident about our own parcels. So we use the DHCP dataset with more than 300 subjects to delineate the 7 functional networks, specifically for neonates. And I will explain why this is a neonate and not we are following the U atlas. Here we see somatomotor, frontoparietal, attention, limbic, visual. But now one interesting comes up, emerging default. Not the default mode network we know, it's an emerging one. Auditory. And we reproduce it over the subgroup 1 and 2 by dividing the data set into 2 groups and across different bootstrapping analysis, and we found we are pretty reproducible. So, as we talked, the default mode network, emerging default mode, there we see something different. The emerging DMN is here, and when we see the adult one, the DMN of the frontal and temporal are missing actually in the neonate, because it is still emerging. It's not yet fully developed. But when we look at the somatomotor and the visual component, which are the primary networks, they look pretty similar. So yeah, emerging default mode is the main thing here that we are able to find and delineate properly. Now, if sometimes people ask me, Sovesh, 7 networks are good, but I also want to do a little more deep. I want to go higher networks or more parcellations. So that's why we also come up with 19 functional networks. So as we remember this chart which I showed earlier, so 7 and 19 were the optimal starting points for us. So we come up with this 19 functional network where we SM1, SM2, which is somatomotor 1, somatomotor 2, similarly visual 1, visual 2, and so on. Then, when we go for a more 19 networks, there are some discrepancy among the reproducibility, but yeah, we were able to achieve around average 80% or like 0.8 dice, if I mean that way. Now, this parcellation was not intended, or the method was not intended for neonatal functional parcellation. Because why only stop at neonate? Why not infant? Why not adolescent? Why not aging population also? So we tried and tested out on HCPYA data, where we are able to reproduce the UI atlas by the adult, which is well established and well known in the field. And let's see if we apply our pipeline, how close we can go to the UI atlas. And we're about to reach around 0.82 overall. And some networks like somatomotor and like visual went beyond that. So, but like as I told you earlier, even though we are using adult parcellations for hundreds of high-profile journal papers, I still feel that there is a lot more we need to care for the neonate and infant, and not just randomly transfer an adult parcellation to a developing infant population study. So as we studied, adult past is not transferable to neonates, as several higher order functional networks are yet to fully develop. In conclusion, our study introduced TReND, a novel transformer-based autoencoder framework with RNMF clustering for neonatal functional parcellation. Transformer-based autoencoders capture long-range temporal dependencies while mitigating the overinfluence of noise in resting state fMRI signal. Confidence module modulates the contribution of each time points based on its reliability and further removes noise from temporal features. RMF clustering ensures smooth and biologically possible parcellations. Our approach provides a dedicated solution for neonatal brain functional organization. And finally, the resulting 7 and 19 network parcellation aim to establish standardized neonatal functional atlas, paving the way for the future research in early brain organization. At last, I want to thank everyone from my lab, and yeah, thank you. Have a nice day.
Thanks to the speaker for getting us back on time. There's one question in the audience response. Your attention network is split by the motor cortex and includes premotor and primary sensory areas. Isn't this problematic?
We actually looked through it, and we found that it was more reproducible in that way. It was actually some premotor parts were there. We suspect that since at the neonate level, the higher order networks are yet fully developed, the attention was more leading there. Yeah. Thank you, whoever it is.
There's a question.
Yes, so it's a voxel-based method.
Yeah.
And you treat every voxel as an independent input, and did you consider about spatial autocorrelation? And if you solve this problem with clustering, it does not fundamentally different from running a kernel PCA on clustering.
Yeah, I totally agree to that. It's fundamentally similar to using another clustering method. The main achievement here was we used the geodesic distance for the spatial things, which I informed that we thresholded our temporal features correlation matrix and using a geodesic, which uses the spatial features. And yeah, as you mentioned correctly, it is another method of clustering, not different from KPCA, ICA. That's why the validation was with them.
Well, noted that geodesic distance does not necessarily have a biological plausible feature, because they are distinct on various functional and structural boundary across the cortical cortex. The same data with the same, the different data with the same geodesic distance can feature completely different profile.
To be honest, I agree to that point, but that's what the best we could find as a spatial features, because functional network are based on coherent regions, like nearby regions, and bold signals are based on that, okay, functional parcellation are based on this network has a similar bold signal with this, and that's why we can combine that as a clusters at 2 voxels. So we also can, okay, let's see if we can go beyond that and say if it is nearby. So that's what the best we could do. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
Thank you.
So in the interest of time, we can discuss this later, so we can take the questions later.
Okay, so just to let you know, if anyone wants more about this, 1646 is my poster number. Please happy to share more. Thank you.